But what about today when someone loses public trust? Is it possible to gain it back? Like the Brian Williams scenario. Do you believe that Brian Williams can come back?
Well, I don't know everything that Brian did or didn't do, and I know he I know about one incident, and I think if that's what there is, I think it's possible that Brian can resurrect himself and come back. The country, Americans are very forgiving people, and they understand a mistake. And so I think it is possible for Brian to come back under those circumstances, if that's all there is. And they're investigating just about it. He'll be the most investigated journalist in the history of the profession by the time NBC is done with him. And I hope he can come back. He's a good guy, and he's worked hard. And as I said, the country is forgiving in its nature. We have forgiven a lot of people for doing a lot of bad things. So we'll see. This is a time will tell answer.
Now you're someone who has won so many Emmys, 47 to be exact. Which one meant the most?
Which child do you like the most? Which parent?
I don't have 47 children.
Which parent do you like the most? You like your mother more than your father? Be careful. The point is, I love a lot of shows that never got nominated for Emmys. I love what I've done. I love what I've been privileged to be part of. Yeah, there are some Emmys that have a special meaning for me when we took Nightline to South Africa or the Middle East. Those are very meaningful Emmys, but I got an Emmy for production at the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, and that means something to me. Every Emmy that I've won means something to me, but a lot of shows that I never got nominated for mean something to me. And I've done things that never won Emmys but won DuPonts, which are also, I've got 6 DuPonts, and they're really important to me. Like the Sarah Palin interview with Katie was not nominated for an Emmy, which was an oversight by the Emmy committee, especially since they gave Tina Fey an Emmy for basically reading our transcript. But it won a DuPont for excellence in journalism, which Katie richly deserved, and we all worked very hard on. So I care a lot about a lot of shows that have been honored and a lot of shows that have been overlooked.
Which one do you think had the most profound change in the world? Which piece of work that you've done?
The South Africa series.
Why?
When we started the South Africa series, there weren't demonstrations in this country, and Nelson Mandela was going to be on Robben Island forever. When we ended the South Africa series, which was broadcast in South Africa, which was the first time some of their citizens ever saw a person of color and a white person in the same frame. And they really got a sense. We reported on what the world thought about what was going on and talked about the two sides and the issues they had and what caused apartheid to happen and the outrage that a lot of people had about it. I think it gave South Africans a different view of what their country was like. I'll tell you a story. One of the people who worked on our broadcast in South Africa was an associate director, and her name was Ria. Her brother was married to her husband was the son of the founder of the Broederbond. So our associate director's husband was married to the guy whose parents basically were the head of a party that was apartheid. They were the people who pushed it, who supported it, who started it. So he was the Broederbond. And I said to Ria, are you sure you want to work with us? Because I don't think people who are pro-apartheid are going to appreciate our presentation, even though it's going to play on South African TV. She said, no, he's very supportive of me getting this experience working with the American networks and all the rest. So I said, well, you've got to tell me what he thinks. Because the deal was that we would do the shows, they would play in the United States, and they would immediately play in South Africa. So Monday night show in America would play Tuesday in South Africa. So Wednesday, we were all sitting there, and wondering what was going to happen with Rhea. And she came into the office, and we looked at her, and we said, well, don't keep us in suspense. What did your husband say? She said, I walked in and I chickened out. I wasn't going to wake him, and I was afraid about what he might say. And then I'm kind of quietly getting undressed to go to bed, and he wakes up and he says, I saw your program last night. And she said, yes, and he says, you know what? He said, we're wrong. And she said, what? She said, we're wrong. Apartheid is wrong. It was one of the most emotional moments I've ever had in my life. The entire staff of Nightline was sitting there. She was explaining how this ideologue really had watched our show and determined, oh my God, the mistake I've made. And we all cried. And we realized that the show was going, was going to have a profound impact in South Africa and in the United States. And in fact, it kind of did. And a year and a half later, Nelson Mandela was released from prison. I'm not saying we did it, but we were part of the noise that was created that changed people's minds and changed the way business was done and allowed to be done in South Africa and here and around the world.
How did it feel to see him eventually become president and see him sort of change the landscape of South Africa in the way it did?
He was an amazing man. I met him on one occasion, and I don't know, I guess it was kind of like meeting Lincoln, if I had ever met Lincoln. I'm not quite old enough to have done that, but it was very special to meet him. He just oozed greatness, and I really felt like, I said to somebody right then, I said, God, I feel like I've just met Abraham Lincoln. I mean, somebody who's had that kind of impact and has that kind of morality.
He's obviously not the only world leader you've met. I also found online a photo of you and Fidel Castro together.
And you could find photos of me and Yasser Arafat and
it goes on.
Bashir Assad and the Ayatollah Khomeini and a whole lot of people who, all kinds of terrorists throughout the world and all kinds of dictators throughout the world and all kinds of, presidents and prime ministers. I've been lucky.
What did those guys teach you? What did Fidel Castro, Khomeini, Arafat, what did all these men teach you?
Not to let journalists near them. What they all teach different lessons. That's an impossible question to answer. They're all very interesting. They're all interesting in their experiences. For instance, one thing people don't realize about the Iranian leaders is they have all been victimized by terrorism. So when we think of them as just people who caused terrorism, we have to remember that many of them have been bombed, have been terrorized, have been attacked. So they understand full well the terrorism, which sometimes makes me wonder why they engage in it, or we think they do. I've spent a lot of years covering the Middle East, a lot of years, and I recognize the profound problems that these Middle Eastern leaders have. I was very friendly with Rabin and Netanyahu and as I said, Yasser Arafat and Abu Abbas and people who have had some role in the Middle East, either a good role or a dangerous role. And I sometimes wonder, it's like generations are going to have to go by before they're going to sit down and actually make peace with each other. And it's so tragic because Palestinians and Israelis really are cut from the same cloth. And they should find a way to make peace, but a lot of people won't let them make peace. And, I can't expect Israel to make peace with people who won't recognize them as a country. And I can't expect Palestinians to forgive and forget everything that's happened in the Middle East, whether they brought it on or they didn't. So it's, you come to realize that these are profound issues that take great patience and great time, and every once in a while you meet a leader who has the potential to solve it or make it better. And often I meet people who it would be really nice if they just left the scene and, you know, didn't take part because they're not helping. But you meet people and you pull for the great ones and you pull a different way for the not great ones.
Now, you and I have a mutual friend who introduced us, Larry King. Why do you think his show was so successful, and why is it that CNN hasn't really been able to replace his time slot with a show like his in a successful manner?
Well, his show was successful, and I was running CNN when his show was most successful, and which I'm very proud of. I love Larry. I think Larry is one of those interviewers who asks the questions you want asked. You know, there are people who chide him and say he doesn't do a tough enough interview, but that's hogwash. He asks the questions that need to be asked. He doesn't give anybody a pass, but he doesn't ask them kind of in a Mike Wallace way, you know, with, you know, waving paper in front of somebody's face and doing something. Mike was spectacular, so I'm not criticizing Mike. That was Mike's style. Larry's style is he kind of sneaks up on you and lets you cut your own throat instead of him doing it. I think that he had a unique time slot. We didn't let other programs kind of poach on his guests, so that his presentation was unique to the network. What happened at CNN is everybody was booking the same guests, and they were recycling it, so that you would see a guest 2 hours before him, and he was having the same guest on his show. Well, he lost his uniqueness on that network, and it was a mistake the network made. So it made him less valuable to CNN at that time. They haven't been able to replace him because great talent is not easy to find. You know, you can find a lot of people who can sit there and walk through the motions and say they're the host and welcome people and introduce guests and do whatever, but not everybody is Larry King. Not everybody can do what he did.
If you were still running CNN, what would you do differently?
You know, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go there. Jeff Zucker is a really brilliant executive and knows television as well as anybody who's ever worked in it. And I'm not about to sit here and second guess what Jeff Zucker ought to do. I think he knows he's got an extraordinary news network, maybe the only real international news network there is, except for the BBC. And I think he'll use its strengths and use social media like it should be used, and embrace it like it ought to be embraced. And I look forward to seeing what Jeff does. Jeff is terrific.
With all your success came a great deal of financial success as well. Has there been anything that you've spent money on that you've looked back on and said, wow, you know, that was ridiculous, or why?
I don't know where you're going with that.
I'm curious,
Is
have you
there
ever
something I bought for myself
yeah,
that I
you were
wonder
like,
what the hell was I doing?
Yeah.
I'm not prone to grand purchases like that. So I don't have huge expensive cars, and I don't have, I mean, my big expensive cars, I have a Corvette, a 2000 Corvette, which cost $57,000 in 2000, and I treat it like it's my child. So it's 15 years old and it has 13,000 miles, and it looks like it just came out of the shop, out of the manufacturer. It's in perfect mint condition. I only take it out when it's sunny and 75 or above. So I treat it like gold. That's my big get. That's not something to, you know, so I don't have a Tesla, and I don't have a mansion, and I don't do that. I enjoy my friends, and I like to see them, and I like to meet them for dinner, and I like to help them when they need help. And that's how I've spent my money.
Well,
I'm happy. I have a charity that I care desperately about, the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the ASPCA, and they could use your assistance, and I give them money, a percentage of my money every year, and I care desperately about the little critters that they take care of. And I had a cat for 19 and a half years named Buddy, who was the most special friend I could have imagined. And his memory has only made me do more.
They're the most loyal animals.
Well, they're great. They're really great, and he always had my back. And people who knew Buddy loved him. Even the people who didn't like cats loved him, and they used to tell me that, because they would see things he would do for me, that he always had my back. He was my cat. And I still miss him. I lost him last October.
Sorry for your loss. I know what it's like to lose an animal.
If people would donate to the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, it would be a good thing.
You have my donation. I don't know if it's going to be that substantial.
Doesn't matter.
But
you send $1 or whatever you can afford, and you will save a life. You will save a life of a little person who has nowhere else to turn, and will give you unconditional love if you adopt from the ASPCA. It's a worthy cause, and a God will smile on you for it.
What's the most important thing you've learned in life?
I think there are core qualities that we all should have or strive to have. Things like integrity, honor, loyalty, kindness. And I think you learn as you grow older, if you grow older smartly, that these are really important to nurture and to make sure that you have kindness, honesty, integrity, loyalty. It's what separates us from the rabble. And so that's what I've learned, I think.
With all the time, care, and nourishment you spent in your career, was there anything in your personal life that you feel like you missed out on?
Well, you know, the going saying is nobody ever died saying, I wish I'd spent more time in the office. So I would tell you that I think as I moved up in the business and devoted more and more time to work, that I short shrifted my family at times. And I've tried to make up for it as best I can. But I'm not sure, actually, I would do it differently. But I know I didn't spend as much time as I look back on and wish I'd spent with my family and taking care of them. I made the time I spent with them count. And I wasn't gone all the time, but I was gone a lot, more than the average person, traveling for stories or traveling in the wars or just being at the office in strange hours. When I did Nightline, I would get up after my kids had gone to school. I would come home after they were already asleep. So I really only saw them on the weekends. When I look at my 2 daughters and their children, and I see how wonderful they are, you know, I can't get enough of them. And I wonder how I actually spent so much time working when I had such fabulous children that I could have spent more time with.
Emotional. Rick, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Thank you all for watching. Another special thanks to our sponsors, DDC New York. It's been amazing. Thank you all.